Imagine walking down an empty, dimly lit street. Your mind wanders for just a fraction of a second and suddenly crack you violently stub your bare toe against a massive, jagged stone sitting right in the middle of your path. Or perhaps recall a moment you blindly slammed your entire body into an unyielding, freezing brick wall. What is the very first sensation that violently detonates inside your brain? Agony, pure, unfiltered, breathtaking pain. That excruciating jolt of electricity shoots up from your crushed nerve endings, tearing through your spinal cord, screaming a single, undeniable truth into your consciousness. That stone is real. That wall is real. This physical world is a dense, cold, unforgiving monolith that exists completely independent of you, your desires, or your mind. That pain is the absolute ironclad proof that materialism has weaponized for centuries to keep us firmly chained to the ground. They told us that what we touch is what is real. But what if I told you that the excruciating pain you felt was a magnificent lie? What if the stone, the wall, and the very ground beneath your feet are nothing more than a meticulously crafted hallucination, and everything you thought you knew about your existence is about to be violently torn apart? Myth Eryndor warmly welcomes you to a journey beyond the veil of the ordinary. If you are ready to question the very fabric of reality and dive into the profound mysteries of existence, please hit that subscribe button to support the channel. Your subscription fuels our motivation to continue unearthing these mind-bending truths for you in the future. For the longest time, I was a willing prisoner of this exact illusion. I bowed down to the altar of a dead, mechanical universe. I used to look up at the night sky and see nothing but a colossal, ticking clockwork machine where galaxies, stars, our fragile Earth, and even you and I were nothing but complex, meaningless biological cogs. In that bleak, suffocating paradigm, life was merely a cosmic accident, a random chemical collision in the primordial soup. And consciousness, this profound, beautiful, agonizing awareness that allows me to speak and you to listen right now, was reduced to a pathetic, flickering spark. It was dismissed as a meaningless byproduct oozing from a lump of grey, gelatinous meat inside our skulls. We were told we are born from absolute nothingness, doomed to flash briefly in a cold, indifferent material void, only to be extinguished back into eternal darkness. The wall was real. The stone was real. We were just insignificant biological dust, waiting to be swept away by the winds of time. But then a terrifying yet liberating moment of doubt crept in, shattering the flawless facade of that grand delusion. When quantum physics emerged, allowing humanity to peer deeply into the invisible architecture of that unforgiving stone and that solid wall, a world-shattering truth was violently dragged into the light. Objective reality, the dense, tangible world we staked our entire sanity upon, does not exist. It never did. If you were to place that very stone under a powerful enough microscope, zooming past the cellular level, plunging down into the atomic and subatomic abyss, the solidity vanishes into thin air. What you witness is not a solid block of matter, but a minuscule, trembling nucleus surrounded by ghostly clouds of electrons engaged in a frantic eternal dance. And the most terrifyingly beautiful revelation of all, 99.9999% of that atom is pure, unadulterated emptiness, an absolute void. That agonizing pain you felt when you kicked the stone, it was never the collision of two solid objects. It was entirely an illusion. What you experienced was merely the invisible electromagnetic repulsion between the electrons in your shoe and the electrons of the stone. The truth is, you have never actually touched anything in your entire life. The undeniable solidity of matter is nothing but a sophisticated mirage, woven by your brain to keep you alive in this survival game. With the catastrophic collapse of this so-called solid matter, the entire foundation of materialism crumbles into dust before our very eyes. If the physical world at its deepest, most fundamental layer is nothing but vibrating fields of energy floating in an infinite void, and if its shape is only defined through the lens of an observer, a monumental question rises from the ashes, a question of life and death for human philosophy and science, between consciousness and matter. What is the true origin of all existence? Does dead matter somehow miraculously give birth to consciousness, or is consciousness the supreme invisible architect that breathes life into this entire material illusion? To answer that monumental question, we must first turn our gaze toward the very instrument materialism confidently claims is the creator of our awareness, the human brain. For centuries, the scientific orthodoxy has desperately tried to convince us that if you just stack enough unthinking, unconscious biological building blocks together, a miracle suddenly occurs. They argue that billions of dark, silent neurons firing electrical impulses back and forth across synapses somehow magically generate the vibrant multidimensional theater of your mind. I spent years trying to accept this premise, dissecting medical textbooks and staring at functional MRI scans, looking for the exact location of the human soul. I looked at the gray folded tissue, the blood vessels, the chemical pathways of dopamine and serotonin. But the more I stared into that biological machinery, the more a profound, unsettling dissonance gnawed at my spirit. Think about your most cherished memory. Think about the intoxicating earthy scent of rain hitting dry soil after a long summer drought. Recall the agonizing hollow ache of heartbreak that physically paralyzed your chest, or the explosive warm resonance of a symphony that brought tears to your eyes. Where do these vivid, deeply personal experiences reside? Inside a lump of physical matter. If you crack open a human skull, you will not find a single drop of the color red, nor will you hear the echoes of a childhood lullaby. You will only find meat, blood, and electricity. This is what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness, and it is the impenetrable brick wall where the arrogant march of materialism violently crashes and burns. There is absolutely no mathematical equation, no biological mechanism, and no physical law that can explain how objective dead matter transforms into subjective living experience. It is utterly absurd to believe that unconscious ingredients can bake a conscious cake. If you arrange billions of dominoes in a brilliantly complex pattern and knock the first one over, you might create a magnificent cascading display of motion. But no matter how intricate the pattern, those dominoes will never suddenly develop the ability to feel the joy of falling. They will never look around and contemplate their own existence. Yet this is precisely what the materialist worldview asks us to swallow without question. It demands we believe that we are nothing more than biological automatons, wet computers, running evolutionary software, where our love, our grief, and our yearning for the divine are just chemical illusions designed to propagate our DNA. I refuse to accept such a bleak, spiritually bankrupt narrative. When I sit in total silence and turn my awareness inward away from the noise of the external world, I do not encounter a mechanical processor crunching data. I encounter an infinite, silent presence. I feel a vast, luminous emptiness that watches, that knows, that simply is. This awareness cannot be reduced to a byproduct of biology, because it is the very canvas upon which biology is perceived. The brain does not produce consciousness any more than a television set produces the news broadcast. The brain is merely an incredibly complex biological receiver, an antenna tuned to a specific localized frequency of a much grander universal consciousness. When you damage the television, the picture distorts. When you turn it off, the screen goes black. But the signal, the invisible, pervasive broadcast, remains entirely untouched, endlessly radiating through space. Our brains filter and limit the infinite scope of consciousness so that we can function in this space-time survival game, but they do not create it. We have been searching for the origin of the mind in the completely wrong direction, digging frantically in the dirt when we should have been looking at the light illuminating the ground. When we realize that the human brain is merely a fragile receiver rather than the omnipotent creator of our subjective reality, we are forced to look outward, back into the bizarre, mind-bending quantum realm where the observer reigns supreme. If you delve into the deepest, most rigorously tested experiments in the history of modern physics, most notably the legendary double-slit experiment, you will encounter a truth so radical and terrifying that it caused even Albert Einstein to recoil in philosophical horror. Scientists discovered that when they fired microscopic particles like electrons or photons through a barrier with two slits, the particles behaved in a way that defied all logic. When left completely unobserved, these particles acted like a wave of pure, infinite possibilities. They passed through both slits simultaneously, interfering with themselves, existing in a ghostly state of superposition where they were everywhere and nowhere all at once. But the very millisecond a conscious observer decided to measure, watch, or record which slit the particle went through, the universe violently snapped into a single defined state. The wave of infinite potential instantaneously collapsed into a solid, measurable particle. It acted as if it knew it was being watched. I remember the exact moment I truly understood the implications of this. I was sitting alone in my room, staring at the walls, struck by a wave of existential vertigo. The universe is not a massive ticking clock playing out a predetermined script in the dark. The universe is a fluid, interactive matrix of probabilities that literally requires your conscious gaze to take physical form. Without consciousness, matter is nothing but a mathematical whisper, a floating ghost of potential in an absolute void. It is your awareness, your very act of looking, that drags the physical world out of the realm of probability and forces it to solidify into the dense reality you interact with. You are not a passive audience member sitting in the dark theater of a pre-existing universe. helplessly watching the movie of life unfold. You are the projector. You are the infinite light illuminating the film reel. Materialism told us that the universe created us, but the deepest layers of quantum mechanics are screaming the exact opposite. We are actively, continuously creating the universe. The legendary physicist John Archibald Wheeler called this the participatory universe, a cosmos where the observer and the observed are locked in a profoundly intimate, inseparable dance of creation. Think about what this means for your daily life. When you walk into an empty room, does the room exist before you enter it? From a strictly quantum perspective, until the moment your consciousness interfaces with that space, the room is merely a swirling storm of probability waves. Your gaze acts as the cosmic anchor, freezing the chaotic potential into a beautifully stable sensory experience. This forces a terrifyingly beautiful realization upon us: the entire cosmos, with its billions of spinning galaxies, black holes, and burning stars, is entirely dependent on the existence of a conscious mind to witness it. A universe devoid of consciousness is indistinguishable from nothingness. The mountains, the rivers, the sprawling cities, and the very air you breathe are intimately tethered to your awareness. We have been hypnotized into feeling small, insignificant, and powerless, when in reality, we are the indispensable architects of the cosmos. Reality is not something that happens to you. Reality is something that happens through you. The undeniable truth that consciousness dictates the behavior of matter obliterates the illusion of a dead objective universe once and for all, paving the way for an even more staggering revelation about who we truly are beneath our physical skin. If our conscious observation is the very mechanism that solidifies the chaotic quantum probability into tangible reality, then we are inevitably drawn to a staggering, majestic realization about the true nature of our identity. For my entire life, I believed a very specific, deeply ingrained lie. I believed that I was a completely isolated entity, a solitary spark of awareness, locked inside a fragile meat suit, separated from you, separated from the trees, separated from the stars by vast, unbridgeable gulfs of empty space. This is the grand illusion of the ego, the psychological firewall that materialism uses to divide and conquer the human spirit. It breeds a profound, agonizing loneliness, a constant underlying terror that we are alone in a hostile alien universe. But once you tear down the physical facade, once you realize that matter is merely an illusion woven by awareness, the boundaries between you and the universe violently dissolve. If consciousness is the fundamental fabric of reality, the invisible foundation upon which all matter rests, then consciousness cannot be divided. It is an infinite, seamless ocean. You and I are not separate, isolated puddles of awareness, miraculously generated by our individual brains. We are simply different waves rising from the exact same eternal ocean. We are the universe experiencing itself from billions of different, unique vantage points. When I look into your eyes, I am not looking at a stranger. I am looking at another perfectly crafted manifestation of the exact same universal mind that animates my own beating heart. This isn't just poetic mysticism, it is the logical climax of a universe built upon consciousness. Think of the concept of non-duality whispered by ancient spiritual masters for millennia, and only now being reluctantly echoed by the bleeding edge of quantum physics. There is only one consciousness, one supreme boundless I am that breathes life into the cosmos. It puts on the temporary mask of myth Eryndor, it puts on the mask of the person listening to these words, it puts on the mask of the soaring eagle and the ancient silent redwood tree. We are all playing an immensely complicated, beautifully orchestrated game of cosmic hide-and-seek. The supreme consciousness shattered its own infinite awareness into infinite fragments, deliberately forgetting its true divine nature so that it could experience the thrill of discovery, the agony of loss, and the intoxicating warmth of human connection. When you truly internalize this, when you let this realization sink past your intellect and into your bones, the heavy, suffocating chains of isolation instantly shatter. The terrifying vastness of the universe is no longer cold or indifferent. It is deeply, intimately familiar. The night sky is no longer an abyss. It is a mirror reflecting your own infinite nature back at you. Every act of violence, every judgment, every ounce of hatred we direct at another living being is ultimately an act of profound self-harm. We are literally attacking ourselves. Conversely, every act of pure love, every moment of selfless compassion, is a stunning recognition of our shared indivisible origin. The illusion of separation is the root of all human suffering, greed, and destruction. We hoard wealth, we build borders, we wage catastrophic wars because we mistakenly believe we are separate fragments competing for survival in a dead material world. But when the veil is lifted, we realize that trying to hurt another person to elevate ourselves is as utterly insane as the right hand stabbing the left hand to claim victory over the body. We are one breathing, pulsing, conscious organism, Embracing this boundless universal consciousness does not magically erase our mortal struggles, but rather it violently and beautifully transfigures the entire purpose of our human existence. Some might argue that if the material world is just a sophisticated illusion, a holographic dream generated by a universal mind, then nothing matters. They fear that this revelation leads to apathy, a nihilistic detachment from the real-world pain, poverty, and struggles that define the human condition. I have wrestled with that exact philosophical demon in the dark hours of the night. Why should I care about paying my bills, fighting for justice, or healing my trauma if this world is fundamentally unreal? But the deeper I journeyed into this truth, the more I realized that this perspective is the ultimate misunderstanding of the illusion. The fact that this reality is a dream does not mean it is meaningless. It means it is deeply, profoundly malleable. You do not come to a theater knowing the movie isn't real just to sit in the audience and stare blankly at the floor. You immerse yourself. You let the story break your heart. You let it make you laugh. You let it terrify you, all while holding on to the comforting secret knowledge that you are safe in your seat. We are immortal, infinite consciousness that bravely chose to dive into this dense, heavy, painfully limiting realm of matter. We came here precisely because of the limitations. In an infinite ocean of absolute perfection and timelessness, there is no risk, no friction, no shadows, and therefore no growth. We created the illusion of time so we could experience the breathtaking beauty of a fleeting sunset. We created the illusion of fragility so we could understand the earth-shattering power of protective love. We created the illusion of death so that life would have a fierce, undeniable urgency. The ultimate goal of this awakening is not to aggressively escape the physical world or to spiritually bypass the messy, agonizing reality of being human. True liberation is found in fully participating in the human experience without being enslaved by it. When you know that the stone, the wall, and your own physical body are just temporary expressions of consciousness, the gripping, paralyzing fear of death loses its absolute power over you. Death is no longer the terrifying, absolute annihilation of your existence into a cold, dark void. Death is merely taking off a tight, heavy shoe after a long, exhausting walk. It is the joyous, expansive return of the focused drop of water back into the limitless ocean. Armed with this transcendent knowledge, we become the conscious artists of our reality. We are no longer victims of circumstance, helplessly crushed by a mechanical, indifferent universe. We are the dreamers waking up inside the dream. We can begin to weave our own reality with intention, using the unparalleled power of our focused awareness, our beliefs, and our emotional frequencies. We can look at the deepest tragedies of our lives not as cruel, random punishments, but as complex, intensely difficult chapters in a story we are collectively writing to expand our own soul's depth. This is the grandest adventure conceivable. We are the universe waking up to its own magnificent glory. So tread lightly, love, fiercely, and never forget the staggering infinite power that slumbers quietly behind your human eyes. The material world may be an illusion, but the love we forge within it is the single most real force in eternity. In synthesizing these profound revelations, we reach a transformative paradigm shift. The materialist worldview that reduces us to mere biological machines is not only spiritually bankrupt but scientifically inadequate. The human brain is not the generator of consciousness, but rather a magnificent receiver tuning into the boundless, eternal frequency of the universal mind. As quantum physics reveals, the physical universe does not exist independently of our observation. It is a dynamic, participatory matrix of probabilities waiting for our conscious gaze to collapse it into reality. This shatters the agonizing illusion of separation. We are not isolated fragments wandering through a dead, indifferent cosmos. We are the cosmos itself, localized into individual perspectives, playing a beautifully complex game of cosmic hide-and-seek to experience the depths of limitation, contrast, and emotion. Realizing that the material world is a malleable dream does not strip life of its meaning. It imbues every moment with profound purpose. We chose this earthly density to learn to grow and to transform the illusion of fragility into the undeniable power of protective love. When we awaken to our true nature as the infinite creators of this reality, we are no longer victims of circumstance. We become conscious architects empowered to shape our lives with intention, navigate our suffering with grace, and recognize the divine spark in every living being we encounter. The journey of human existence is ultimately the universe waking up to its own infinite glory. The profound lesson. The ultimate lesson is that separation is the grandest illusion of the human experience. Every instance of hatred, greed, and deeply rooted suffering stems from the false belief that we are isolated entities competing in a lifeless universe. In truth, we are indivisible threads of the exact same universal consciousness. How you treat another living being is quite literally how you treat yourself. Application to daily life. To apply this to your present life, you must actively shift from a victim mentality to a creator mindset. Start by observing your internal dialogue and emotional frequencies, recognizing that these are the very tools projecting your external reality. When faced with severe adversity, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" reframe it by asking, "What is this specific limitation trying to teach my soul?" Furthermore, practice radical empathy. The next time you feel anger or judgment towards someone, pause and silently remind yourself, they are another version of me wearing a different mask, experiencing a different facet of the dream. By consciously dismantling the walls of your ego, you transform mundane, everyday interactions into profound moments of spiritual connection. Question for the audience. If you fully embrace the truth that you are the conscious architect of your own reality, what is the very first thing you would choose to change about your life today? Please kindly share your thoughts and perspectives in the comments section below so we can all explore and learn from each other's viewpoints. If this message resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel to support our work and stay tuned for more mind-expanding content.